Thanks. I was asked last night by Eilish to fill in for another woman, Helena McNeil, who's a friend of mine and in the same party as me, and she couldn't make it today. Just a quick introduction. My name is Bríd Smith. I'm a councillor with People Before Profit for the Ballyfermot Drimnagh Ward, and I recently ran for People Before Profit in the European elections in Dublin. I read the document that you're asking me to comment on, and just to say briefly, I found that and the discussion with this person this morning very, very interesting. And in particular, some of the issues it raised, around the concept of a state and what is a state, and should we recognise the state or work around it or go through it or whatever, all the other concepts that I've already read from people like Naomi Klein on this issue. So a lot of the ideas in this document were not brand new to me. But it was the way they were termed were kind of brand new to me, talking about the commons versus the public ownership. However, I was organised a conference on water as a human right and water as the right to water, basically, with my trade union, Unite, in April, was it? One of you was here? Yeah, it was April, I think. And Marcela Olivera, who's one of the authors of the document, came over from Bolivia and addressed the conference. She also spoke in Cork and in Belfast the same weekend she was over. So I met Marcela and we had a lot of the discussion about the stuff she writes about. She stayed with me in Ballyfermot and we had long chats about this. And so I found it all very challenging and very interesting, coming from a particular point of view as I do. But just to say, a lot of the stuff that informs me is actually real and happening at the moment. Last night, for example, at 6 o'clock, I attended a public meeting in a car park outside a community centre in North Clondalkin, in Rolla. And there was about 200 people there who'd come from about 4 different estates where Irish Water are trying to install meters against their will at the moment. And the people there had, over the past week, had in their own estates, had street meetings every night to decide what are we going to do tomorrow to stop the meters going into our homes. And each day they took decisions collectively, got out in the morning, confronted Irish Water. They agreed on a sort of like a proclamation almost that they would read out to the workers, indicating to them very firmly and clearly, we're not against you, you're just ordinary workers like we are. This is about us being charged for our water. It's about why the government are doing this to us. We've taken enough pain. We can't take any more. We believe water is a human right and we're asking you now to leave. And because of their sheer numbers and determination, in each case Irish Water left the estates. There was no confrontation, there was no physical abuse, there was no police call, there was nothing like that. It was just numbers of ordinary, decent people singing from the one hymn sheet, having agreed what they were going to say and do, and the workers taking a position, probably under instruction from their management. If you come across that sort of resistance, you leave, you don't get into any level of confrontation. So this big meeting last night took further decisions. One of them is to have a protest outside the offices of all the main political parties in Clondalkin Village next Wednesday night, and furthermore to link in with Ballyfermot and other adjoining areas to work together to try and prevent the water metering and what they see as ultimately the privatisation of water coming in. Because this was one of the arguments that Marcela came over to help us explore, and that is the idea that water is a commodity. I mean, the article puts it very nice when it describes for the people of Cochabamba how water is everybody's and it's nobody's at the same time. And I think the people in Clondalkin see it that way. It rains like most of the time in Ireland. We constantly get loads of rain. We have known water to be something that we can rely on, even though there's been crises from time to time, and depending on where you live, it could be a poisonous crisis with cryptosporidium or whatever it is. And occasionally, if the weather gets good here, which is rare, you might have a bit of a drought. But most of the time, we can rely on an absolute supply of good, clean water, and it falls from the sky. And so people see it as being everybody's, and yet it's nobody's. And that's why they're willing to defend it. But we do know, and it's already happening, that global companies like Veolia, Bechtel, Siemens are on our borders waiting to jump in and grab possession of this natural resource for which Ireland should be very, very proud and happy to have, because we have it in abundance. And people are seeing this issue, not just, again, and the article makes this point, that when the water committees got organised in Cochabamba, the issue went beyond water. It went into what is our society about, who controls our natural resources, what kind of government do we have, what kind of impact can we have on the type of country we want to have. And I can see and hear all this being reflected already in the campaign for the right to water that's, you know, springing up kind of organically in places like Meath, Cork, Portlaoise last week, Clondalkin this week, and I think it's going to go beyond that. There's other places, of course, that the water metering is happening and there's zero resistance. And earlier on when you talked about the question of class and what is class, is it an abstract concept? For me it's a very real concept, and I think if water meters go into like Foxrock and Castleknock, and I'm not trying to take from people who live in those areas, but it's not the same challenge as if they come into Clondalkin or Ballyfermot, because you have money if you live in Foxrock or Castleknock by and large to be able to pay for these things. You don't have money or resources, and particularly now all your resources have been squeezed out of you with universal social charge, property tax, prices rising, jobs being lost, wages being cut, etc., etc. You all know the story that I'm talking about. And so people are being forced to resist, and they're being forced to recognise that the resistance goes beyond just the question of water, as this article explains in relation to Cochabamba. The other thing I thought was interesting, it jumped out at me in the article, is at the very early stages of the article they talk about the structural adjustment programmes of the IMF, which this was part of this was trying to privatise the water and give it over to Bechtel to run, happened nearly 16 years ago in Cochabamba. And in a funny kind of a way, it's almost like neo-liberalism and capitalism is more developed in the undeveloped world than it is developed in the developed world, if you get what I mean. That they didn't have the wherewithal to go after the public utilities and try and privatise them 15, 16 years ago here in Europe, although they're doing it now at the rate of knots. And I learned lots about this when I was contesting the elections for Europe, because they now have a transatlantic trade and investment programme which allows global companies to challenge any state, anywhere in the world, for delivering services, public services, without throwing it open to the market. So already, for example, one of the speakers at this water conference, a man called Mike Gonzalez, who's actually doing a programme for BBC on water, The New Oil is the title of the programme, told us that there's a state in America where they've passed laws that allow them to prosecute individuals who stick out a bucket in their back garden to catch the rainwater, because the private company claim ownership of that water as it falls from the sky. And the TRIPS, the transatlantic investment laws that they're bringing out, will allow private companies to conduct secret courts where they will look at, say, for example, well, the Irish state want to hold on to water as a utility, so we're going to have a sort of a kangaroo court about them, find them guilty of stopping free competition for all of us global companies, and if we find them guilty, we can impose massive fines on them, and they must pay those fines over to this transatlantic arrangement whereby basically global capitalism controls everything. And this article helps to bring that out. I think the similarities between what the Cochabamba people faced and what we're facing here, like for example the question of boycotting, paying the bills, occupations of the Central Plaza in Cochabamba as a tactic, that then had to go on to organising popular assemblies, and then for people to raise the demands beyond just water, that they wanted more, that they wanted to defend themselves in a different way and protect what they have. I think the article is very challenging and very interesting and very relevant to what's going on, and that's what I found even when I met Marcela and had long conversations with her about what was going on there. And I think that when the article summarised by saying that the people were not organising or asking the state for anything or to try and negotiate their rights, but they were looking to go beyond the state and to determine and to implement conditions over their own lives, to determine their own lives and to implement conditions that they wanted to choose about how they run that. I find that challenge is huge, and it's very relevant to us.